We are going to kick off, and thank you so much for joining us at 10 o'clock on a gray November morning. I really appreciate it. I'm Kind Wen, and I'm one of the CEOs at Shine Cancer Support. And we are really excited this morning to be having this session, which is basically about how do you use this pretty awful experience that we've all had to bring about change and good. And we are joined this morning by three great people who I've had the pleasure of knowing for a long time, or in Roland's case, getting to know really recently. So I'm just going to give you guys a chance to introduce yourselves really briefly. So Roland, can I go to you? Just who are you and where are you from?
Yeah, of course. My name is Roland Munger. I'm based in Southeast Cornwall. I've got a skin cancer diagnosis in 2016, so metastatic malignant melanoma, which came through my toe and worked its way up through my body, but I'll go into that a bit more later on. And just as a side note, I work in change in my day job. I work as a change manager, so this is kind of the coming together of poor health and a day job in a perfect Sunday morning for me.
Well, thank you for joining us. Cara, I'm going to go to you.
Morning. So I'm Cara. I'm based in North London in Camden. I've actually had two primary cancers. So I was diagnosed with stage 4 bowel cancer back in 2016, and then during the pandemic with an early stage womb cancer, both of which are linked to a genetic mutation that I have that falls under Lynch syndrome. So that's my cancer story. And like Roland, actually, I work on the fringes of change because I'm a business adoption specialist at Marks and Spencer's.
Thank you. So again, bringing together your poor health and day job on a great Sunday morning. Welcome. Precious, I'm going to go to you, my friend. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Good morning, guys. I'm Precious. I was diagnosed with chronic myeloid leukemia. I had a stem cell transplant and lots of chemo. I work as a company secretary. And I'm actually retraining. So I heard it's a bit scrambled at the moment. And that's it.
So you're changing.
I am changing. Yeah, I'm changing as well.
Awesome. Well, what we really wanted to focus on, like I said this morning, is, people who are making change or trying to bring about change, because we know actually, we do a lot in this country for cancer to promote awareness of cancer treatment, that kind of thing. But, there's always more that we can be doing. And I think what I love about the three of you is that you're all doing something different and something that maybe people wouldn't have thought about so much a few years ago. So Cara, I just wanted to go to you first, if that's okay. And I mean, you mentioned, obviously, you've had 2 diagnoses and Lynch syndrome. Maybe just before we get into the work you're doing, would you mind just telling us a little bit about your kind of treatment and where you are with your treatment and recovery?
Yeah, of course. So currently no evidence of disease for both of the cancers, which is really great news. So for the bowel cancer, pretty much a miracle. Well, I think it is, because there was stage 4, obviously, but I've been 5 years now with no evidence of disease. So really good news on that. In terms of treatment, I've had chemotherapy, I've had a liver resection. Well, it's 2-part liver resection, bowel surgery. I've had a hysterectomy. I've had my ovaries out. And I'm currently in the throes of surgical menopause, so that's my challenge for this year, which is joyous. Having had a womb cancer, can't have HRT, so it's kind of a process of just seeing what works for me. So it's quite a challenge, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot. That's more than most people get, over a much longer
That's it in a nutshell as well.
So slightly greedy with the cancer and the cancer treatments, but
I really don't want to go for a triple crown though. So fingers crossed, Lynch syndrome is done for now.
Yes, yeah, I think 2 is way more than enough, isn't it? Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about the work that you've been doing at M&S?
Yeah, so earlier this year, I managed to, should I say, convince our M&S CEO to partner with Bowel Cancer UK to put the symptoms of the bowel cancer onto all of our loo roll packages, and also on the backs of toilets doors throughout the store estate. So kind of all started out of, well, off the back of Deborah James announcing that she was finishing her treatment. I always find this, actually, when I have somebody that I know within the community, I'm kind of re-galvanized when I see them going through difficult times, and that came off the back of this. I think she'd done so much to break down the stigma around bowel cancer, and it was a moment where the nation was listening, and without sounding mercenary, it provided opportunities to try and get information out there that we haven't had in the bowel cancer community before. So I emailed our CEO, who just launched a new colleague suggestion scheme, but I didn't stop there. I did a bit of a Deborah James and started to harass all the senior leadership, and he had a personal story around it. It really connected with it, and within I think 24 to 48 hours of putting the suggestion forward, everything at M&S was in work. And then we joined together to put a call out to the industry along with Bowel Cancer UK to join us in doing the same thing, because the idea was really about just putting the signs and symptoms somewhere that everybody will see it. It's you don't have to go and find it, you don't really have to pay attention to it if you don't want to, but every household in the country buys toilet roll. It's there, and actually if somebody just has a niggling worry, they might notice it, and it might just help them get to a GP. Because with bowel cancer, the one thing that I suppose everyone in the community is really passionate about is that if it's diagnosed early, it's really treatable as a cancer. So yeah, that's kind of how it got started, and then from there we put call out to industry. As I said, I was fortunate enough to be invited onto Lorraine as well, which Deborah James also appeared on in a pre-recorded message, which really helped. She got behind the campaign, and we've seen pretty much every major supermarket in the UK come on board. So I mean, it's fantastic. I get emotional every time I see a loo roll out in stores now. So if you ever see me loitering in the toilet roller aisle, you know why. Oh, you're on mute.
Muted, kind.
That's usually my trick.
There's always someone, isn't there? I was trying to mute other people, muted myself. But that is amazing, and congratulations, because like you said, I think it's something simple. And actually, one of the things I always think when I see cancer awareness campaigns is when they're run by cancer charities, the difficulty is that if you don't think you have cancer or you're not aware, you might not be paying attention to it. So the thing I love about this campaign is that it's out there for everybody. You don't have to be tuned into a specific cancer or cancer charity to be paying attention to it.
Just a little nudge, isn't it?
Yeah.
As I'd like to say.
So how did you come up with the idea for this?
I'd love to say that it was all my own idea and I'm a genius, but to be honest, in the bowel cancer community, since I've been diagnosed, so back in 2016, we've always banded around different ideas of how we could get corporates on board, using something around loo rolls, loo roll packaging, or toilet doors and things always came up, but there was never the opportunity, or we couldn't get to the right decision makers. And I think one of the things you've previously asked is about how easy was it to make this happen, and actually this time round it all just seemed to fall into place and happen like one step after the other. There didn't seem to be that many challenges. I think partly because of what I was talking about with Deborah James raising and putting a spotlight on bowel cancer, but the wheels of trying to get this out there have been in motion since 2016, so it's been a long old process of trying to get people to listen, really. And I think I was just really fortunate that the stars aligned. I had, M&S had a new CEO, he had a personal story about it. Unfortunately, Deborah James' story and her death had captured, well, not unfortunately that it captured the nation's hearts, but her situation. So yeah, now I'm rattling on and I've forgotten what you actually asked me.
No, it was about, where did the idea come from and how did you make it happen?
So it was something that had been bandied around, and it was one weekend following Deborah's announcement. I was just sat at home and I was thinking, we need to do something about this. And I was like, do you know what, I'm in a position where I can make this happen. She's managed to get a whole nation behind her. Surely I can convince some senior leadership within M&S, which is more difficult sometimes than you think it would be. But yeah, it was just emails and conversations, and it happened really quickly. And everyone was really excited about it. And I suppose one of the things for the supermarkets is that it's not an inconvenience to them. And I know it sounds harsh to say that about cancer, like we're all passionate about our cancer journeys and raising awareness. But supermarkets, they've got other things at the front of their mind. You want to make it sort of really easy for them, and it was literally a lift of some symptoms or the infographic that Bowel Cancer UK already had onto packaging, so it didn't really take much work around it to kind of put it into place.
Sure. And did you, I mean, when you were approaching the senior leadership, did you kind of use your own experience and say, I've lived through this, it's really important? Or how did you approach that? Did it feel difficult?
I wrote about my own experience, what I'd been through, that I'd been doing charity work for this amount of time since I'd been diagnosed, and I put a bit about Deborah because I'd met Deborah back in 2016. We were both diagnosed in the same year, so we actually met at the Carol concert for Bowel Cancer UK. So I've worked kind of on and off with her, so I kind of just put a little story around that and then said, please, can you print the symptoms on the loo rolls? And that was it. And it was the same. After M&S had gone and made the announcements, and we'd Bowel Cancer UK had put the Get on a Roll campaign together, I then spent an evening emailing the CEO offices of all the supermarkets in the same vein, really, just explaining my situation, that over half of the British population couldn't name one symptom of bowel cancer, which, I mean, it doesn't help in getting an early diagnosis if you don't know what to look out for, and that bowel cancer is really treatable if caught at those early stages. In fact, sometimes we know that bowel cancer it's got a pre-cancer stage, so a bit like some breast cancers where it can be picked up as polyps and things. So there's a really good chance of like increasing survival for that cancer through some quite, I'd like to say, simple steps, but maybe sometimes complex to put into place. So the raising of awareness amongst people, but then that bridge of getting those people then to take the step to get to their doctors, being able to access like a primary care physician, and then obviously having simple processes through the NHS, which we all know is very complex at the moment in the wake of COVID. Yeah.
Although I should say, I know from some other work I do with the National Cancer Team that there is something called a FIT test. Do you know about this?
Yes. Yeah.
That is quite an easy test that you can do to test your poo, I think. And it's really effective, isn't it?
I think the policies, it's like been brought in now, hasn't it, that primary care, like GPs, can use the FIT test to kind of rule out bowel cancer. And that obviously wasn't the case when I was diagnosed. I went through 12 months of various different testing because it wasn't seen that bowel cancer would happen in somebody so young. So I was 32 when I was diagnosed. So
yeah, well, congratulations. I mean, it's amazing.
Thank you.
Every time I see a message on a loo roll, I do think of you.
Yeah, think of me. One of my friends actually messaged to me when she was at work. She was like, every time I'm sat in the toilets, I think of you. I was like, that is really weird. Don't say that to me.
And yet exactly what you were aiming for as well. So
yeah.
Amazing. Thank you, Cara.
Thank you.
Precious, I'm going to come to you now. And it would be great. I mean, you mentioned that you had CML and you've had a stem cell transplant, but can you tell us a little bit more about just how that happened and kind of where you are in treatment and recovery?
After listening to Cara, I don't know what to say anymore. You're amazing. And I'm just
thank you. We're all amazing.
I'm hitting the shops after this and I'm going to go to the loo roll aisle. I was diagnosed in 2012, so I had all the symptoms, but I had no idea there were symptoms. So I just had this feeling of having lots of infections and flu, and I did all the right things. I went to the walk-in center. I went to the GP like 3 or 4 times. He didn't pick anything up. But I just kept feeling rubbish. And I remember one day going in and he put me on the pill, and I just stood in the reception area crying. And someone said, "Why are you crying?" I said, I don't feel okay. Something is not right, but I don't know what it is. And she just said, "Oh, you know, he's a doctor. He knows what he's doing. Go and get your medicine. If you don't feel well after a week, come back." And I trusted him because he, you know, he's a GP. He knows what he's doing. So I did exactly that. And a few days after that, I was heading for work. I was freelancing at the time. So I was heading for work. And I remember just being in so much pain. My tummy was swollen. I didn't know. I thought my kidneys were down there. So I just thought I had a kidney infection. So I headed to work. I was, you know, in pain, but I had to work. And I remember getting off at Hampstead Tube Station and just feeling really awful, but I had a job to do. So I just said to myself, okay, let's just find out where the hospital is. I knew there was a hospital in Hampstead, but I didn't know where it was. So I just said, let me find out where the hospital is so I can do my work and then go to the hospital and get checked. It was a Saturday, so I wasn't too hot on going to a hospital on a Saturday. But I got to the, you know, the bit where you put your Oyster card, I don't know what it's called. And I just saw a guy standing there, and I tried to ask him questions about where the hospital was. And next thing I knew, I threw up and passed out. And I woke up in the station manager's office, and I just started apologizing. And I just thought he's gonna think I'm drunk. And you know, because it's a Saturday morning, and I just thought, no, this is off. So I started apologizing and just said, yeah, I'll be okay. I need to get to work. So I got up, you know, to head out. And there was this Nigerian guy, and he just spoke to me, and he said, "You're not feeling well." I said, "I know that, but I need to head out and I need to go and do my work. Just tell me where the hospital is and I'll sort myself out." And he said, "You don't look well. I'm going to call you an ambulance." I don't know what happened. I just said, "Fine, you know, let's see, you know, what happens. I'll go in. And after that, I'll head out and do the work." So they called an ambulance. I went into Royal Free and somehow got fast-tracked inside. And people kept coming to, you know, to take bloods, to ask questions. And they just isolated me in this little room while they were interrogating me. And I called my brother. And I said, "Oh, I think I've got something wrong with my kidneys. Can you come?" So he started heading out with his wife, who is a doctor. And they came in. And I remember at one point, lots of doctors came in. And one of them, I think it was a junior doctor, kept saying, "Look at her white blood cell numbers," you know, and people were like, "Oh," and, you know, it didn't mean anything to me. I just thought, I don't know what, you know, I know what white blood cells are, but the number thing didn't make any sense. So I just I waited, and a few hours later, my sister-in-law and my brother arrived, and she just hovered around the medical station. And a few minutes later, she came in, she whispered something to my brother, and I could see his face drop. And she just looked at me and said, "Do you want me to tell you, or do you want to wait?" And I said, "You tell me." And she said, "Oh, you've got cancer." I thought, "Oh no, this can't be happening. My kidneys are sore." "What do you mean I've got cancer?" "What do you mean I've got cancer? My kidneys are sore." Touch it. And she looked at me and said, like, "That's not your kidney. That's called a spleen. That's where your spleen is." So I said, "Oh, okay." But I just waited. I thought, nah, she's wrong, you know, and I'm sure she had something wrong for someone else. But not long after that, a doctor came in. And said, "Miss Jason, I've got some news for you. I've got good news and bad news. Which one do you want first?" And I said, "Hit me with the bad news." And he goes, "You've got cancer, but the good news is you've got the good kind. You've got leukemia."
Oh, the good kind of cancer.
You've got the good cancer. And I was like, "Oh, okay." And he was like, "I'm going to give you a pill." I was like, "Okay, so what next?" And he goes, "Oh, we need to find a bed." I said, no, I've got work to do. And what time are you discharging me? I've got a job to go to. And it's like, no, we're going to get you a bed. And I was in hospital for 3 months. I didn't go home. I was in hospital for 3 months. I did the first round, which was the drugs stage. I went round all the TIB drugs, so imatinib and the whole TIB family, and it didn't really work. So I had to keep going in, had to keep upping the treatment game. And eventually I had to have a haploidentical stem cell transplant, which was a stem cell donation from my brother. So I had the full shebang, and I think I was the first person on that clinical trial. So I feel really special.
We always knew you were special. So
I know. I was the first guinea pig. So I had people watching me from all over. But I'm still here. I'm a NED, so no evidence of disease, and I'm still going on.
Great. And so, I mean, how are you feeling? So you're not on any treatment at the moment. You're just keeping going.
Yeah, keeping going. So I'm not on any treatment for the cancer, but it's a gift that keeps on giving. So I've got other things going on. I went into early menopause from the chemo, which nobody mentioned. I had a problem with my bladder because I had a total body radiation. My hair is not growing so well, so I've got a wig. What else? PTSD, chronic fatigue syndrome, the lot. Yeah. And but no cancer, just different different children.
Just 8 other things you didn't have before.
Just different little children from the whole thing, but no cancer. So.
Well, thank you, Precious, for sharing that. And I know, so Precious and I both had blood cancer and have had some of the same doctors. So we've had long chats about this and our favorite doctor or least favorite doctors. But Precious, I know, obviously, you've been a part of the Shrine community for a while. But one of the things that you're doing at the moment is working as or volunteering as an ambassador for Blood Cancer UK. So can you tell us a bit about that and what you're focused on with them?
Okay. So when I was rounding up my treatment, I did feel very depressed. I just felt at a loss, and I did ask myself what to do going forward. And I think my consultant, you know my consultant, don't you?
I do.
Yeah. He said, you need to find something, find a small charity and give them all you have, pour your energy into that. So I did approach a few charities, and it never felt quite right. The one I thought would be the right one, I'm not going to name anyone. So yeah, they didn't really do much. They kept asking me to write things in for their website, and I didn't feel I was contributing that well. Mm-hmm. And I approached some big ones, and I just found it really, really frustrating. So I left it for a while. And I think it was at a Shrine conference, and I think I was speaking on something, and I just kept banging on about the lack of diversity. And at the end of it, Blood Cancer UK reached out. I actually contacted them before, no traction. And they actually reached out to me this time around, and they said, would you like to work as an ambassador? And I said, on one condition, you guys need to sort out your marketing, you need to sort out your comms, because I don't feel represented by you in any way. And that's the only condition I'll join you as an ambassador. And thankfully they listened. And what I've been doing is just working with them on their comms, working with them on policy. We've actually produced some booklets where we're talking to people of the barmaid community. I think the reason I'm so passionate about this is because it's a huge culture gap. I'm Black, in case no one has noticed.
Oh,
just in case you missed it. We have a completely different culture and a completely different mindset about these things. We don't rush out to donate blood, we don't donate organs, we don't do stem cell, we're just very, private and closeted. We don't even talk about cancer. I know when I was diagnosed and I started this charity thing, my mom was like, oh, don't talk about it, just shut up, you've survived, shut up and move on. And I said, no, I'm not going to keep my mouth shut, because there could be someone after me that would need help, that would need support. And, you know, unless if they see me, they can maybe take hope from me, they can ask questions and I can point them in the right direction. So as a culture, we don't say anything. You know, we're very, very silent on these things. And so I've been working with blood cancer wise, just to push that message out, you know, to reach more people. In terms of diagnosis, you know, the common thing is, you know, if you find a bruising on your skin, that's a sign to get checked. If you're Black, it's quite difficult to find that bruising. If you need a wig, it's quite difficult to find a good wig when you finish your treatment. It's quite difficult to access supports. It's, you know, you don't hear much about clinical trials. So it's just that thing for me to go out there and push that, make people think about diversity and how they communicate so that more people get the message as well. So that's what I've been doing with Blood Cancer UK. I also did an OMACE video because I think we got some funding from OMACE. So I did some of that. So I'm
Is that for the house in Cornwall?
Yes, I didn't win the house, but
I didn't win the house either, and I bought a ticket. The £3 million house in Cornwall.
I tell you, I wanted the house, didn't win it, but I'm on YouTube.
Oh, that's great. So, I mean, Precious, I mean, we've spoken about these, you know, issues before, and I think they're hugely important because we know that people from Black and Asian backgrounds have worse outcomes than people from white backgrounds. And part of that is because of late diagnosis or, you know, and so people are, and they don't get the same amount of treatment. They're not referred to clinical trials. In the same way, there's a lot of assumptions, I think, amongst medical professionals about who might want to go on a clinical trial. So I think there's pretty good evidence, particularly from the US, that people from African-American backgrounds are offered fewer clinical trials than white people. So have you found any kind of challenges in getting that message out there? I mean, obviously you're working with particular organizations, but how have you found getting people to accept what you're saying?
It's been, I mean, when I joined the ambassadorship scheme, there were not that many of us, but now the numbers are getting better, and it's good to hear my story being validated by other people. And so numbers getting better, they're making more investments into comms and campaigns. It's a slow road, but change is happening.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you for that, Precious. And, you know, glad that you're here so many years after that. And I often think of you, if I go to Hampstead Tube Station, I think of you there. So I go, Cara in the toilet and you at Hampstead Station.
Yeah,
slightly more glamorous than the other, but you know.
I know the famous spot. Yeah, whenever I go to Hampstead, I just pretend nothing happened in Hampstead, just walk past. Yeah, and I know the vomit spot.
Oh, thank you. So Roland, I'm going to bring you in now, and you are in Cornwall, I think. Is that right?
Yes.
Plymouth.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
So welcome. And do you want to tell us a little bit about where you are in your treatment and diagnosis and what you've been through?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, I just want to say thanks to Cara and Precious. They're really interesting and amazing stories. Thank you for sharing those. My journey started in 2016. I was working in Wales, living in Cornwall, and I was away at a conference, and I had a call from my GP to say, basically, we've had some results back from a biopsy, and it's skin cancer, and you've got 12 months to go, 5 years if you're really lucky. And this was pretty much a bolt from the blue. You know, I was given no indication that this was going to happen. I'm not a sun worshipper. I'm not a sunbed kind of guy. So the skin cancer thing just didn't really register on my radar, but it came through blunt trauma in my toe. I'd stubbed my toe quite badly a few years before, and it just kind of set up as the primary. And so it was a bit of a, what do I do? So I kind of packed myself up and headed home. I still remember now leaving the hotel room, and then just before the door shut, running back in, because I remembered there was a complimentary bottle of wine that I could take home with me. So I still have my priorities pretty much straight there. And then had this like long 3-hour drive home where I was like, I can't listen to music because every bit of music had emotional attachment. So I ended up listening to 3 hours of coverage of a swimming championships on the radio, which is like ironically the driest thing I could find. And then I, got into the NHS system, and they said, look, the information you've been given is a bit out of date. We can remove the tumor, which had basically moved up my leg and into my groin. That's where the cancer had set up in my lymphatic system. And I had a bit of surgery and I had some radiotherapy, and all seemed to be fine. And then in 2019, I just kind of started being really fatigued and essentially got admitted to hospital with acute ketoacidosis. So my pancreas had just stopped working. So I'd become diabetic without realizing it. Wasn't looking for the symptoms, but as soon as I went into the doctor's surgery, they could smell my breath, which gets this kind of sweet smell to it when you're insulin levels are not topped up naturally. And I thought, oh God, here we go again. And what had happened is the melanoma had moved into my abdomen and curled itself around my pancreas and just kind of squeezed all the life out of it, essentially. So I had a bit of immunotherapy, and at the beginning of 2020, they said it's not working. So because COVID had kind of kicked off as well, they said all the trials have stopped. Essentially, it's end of life care now, palliative care for you. That's all we can offer you. And I've always been quite kind of open about the kind of thing, shared it on social media, and just kind of went out and said, look, if anyone has any idea of what I could do. And it just happened that a friend of mine from like junior school days knew a doctor who was willing to have a look, who referred me to another doctor who said, all right, I think I can do this. And I went up to King's College in August 2020 into the hospital for 2 weeks, and they did what's called the pulse procedure, where they removed the tumour, but also my pancreas, my spleen, and 90% of my stomach. So quite an extreme weight loss regime, but it worked. So I had 9 hours of surgery, and then came home again with a whole bag of pills and things like that to sort out. And at the moment, I'm still same as you guys, NED. But yeah, having had 3 end of life diagnoses along the way, I'm still kind of defying the odds at the moment, and still here. So happy to share and talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, and the psychological impact of all of that must be tremendous, because I think often the impression you can sometimes get from the media is no evidence of disease, you're great. But actually, I mean, 3 end of life diagnoses is, I mean, 1 would be enough for most people. So how are you coping with that?
So really early on, I started writing down what I was going through, and sort of did it as a blog. And part of that was to help my mental health, because I've always found that writing things down just organizes your thoughts, but also gets them out of your head so you can kind of rationalize them and work through them. But the other part of it, I've got friends and family dotted all over the place, and I just got really bored really quickly of repeating the same information over and over and over again. So I thought, if I put it all here in a way that people can understand and read, then you can refer to that. And then if you've got any other questions, fine. But I don't want to spend all my life talking about cancer, because it gets you down after a while. So I started writing it whenever anything happened, really. And then I started getting messages from people when I was doing well, and they were saying, we haven't heard from you for a while, are you okay? And I was like, okay, I better do another blog just to let people know I'm doing okay. So it became this kind of rolling thing. And then I would get people messaging me saying, oh, I read something in your book, in your blog, and it made so much sense. I couldn't communicate that to my wife. So, but particularly a lot of men were contacting me saying I couldn't put this feeling or this emotion into words, but I've just shown this to my wife, and now she understands what I'm going through, or whatever it may be. So that was brilliant, because I just thought, wow, okay, that's helped someone else. That's fantastic. And then when I came out of hospital in 2020, I'd always wanted to write a book anyway, and I'd started probably 10 stories that I've always looked in and thought, oh, someone's probably done this already and I've just not read it, so I don't want to get done plagiarism or just give up on that. And at this point I just thought, well, this is my story, no one can have done this before, so this is what I can do. And I took all the blog posts and added a bit to it, and I messed around with it, and then last about 13 months ago published a book on my own, just to put it all into something, into kind of
Have a
that's the
copy
one.
here.
Big toe is killing me.
My big toe is killing me.
So good product placement, thanks for that. And it's just been an amazing little journey of, you know, sharing that and being able to raise a bit of awareness, but also kind of break down a few barriers, because there's lots of people I know who I've said, oh, have you had a copy of the book? And they said, oh, I want to buy one, but I don't know if I'm ready to read it. And I have to sort of get other people to say to them, it's not a doomy read. It's not a kind of, oh, poor me. Like there's so much ridiculous humor to be found when you're going through all this cancer stuff. And yes, it's devastating, and yes, there are times when you find yourself sobbing hard on the floor, but there are other times when you're just like being given leaflets at the most inopportune moments about, you know, sex and cancer, or this thing or that thing, and you're just like, oh, like not ready for this right now. You know, I had to sit and wait for some results in a room that had this Mickey Mouse wallpaper and little toys on the floor, and I just thought, why am I in a children's waiting room? These are funny little moments that, you know, I think you can get so absorbed in your diagnosis and your health that if you can take a step back and look at it and try and find a bit of levity in somewhere, it does help. I think that's a coping mechanism. So that's probably one of the big things for me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think we've probably all had those moments where, yeah, you just have to laugh, because as horrible as it is, it can also be incredibly ridiculous, some of the situations you find yourself in. And yeah, it does help, I think, definitely. I know in addition to the blog and the book, you're also involved with some patient advocacy and an app in Cornwall. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so through the blog, I got to know a couple of doctors, George and John, who are based in the Southwest, and they've been developing an app called My Sunrise, which is free for anyone to download, but it's basically for NHS trusts in the Southwest. And what it does is you put in a couple of basic details about your cancer type and where your treatment is, where you're helped, and it's just full of really helpful resources. It's got little quick links so that you can just tap, and your smartphone will straight away phone your oncology center without you having to look up the numbers. There's some really nice little videos on there about, you know, this is what to expect when you go through radiotherapy or when you go for a CT scan, just little videos that you can have a look at. And I think it's a lot of things, but one of the big things for me is that it keeps you away from Google, because you can go in there and you put in your cancer type, and then all the information you need, which is fresh and up to date and relevant to your, not just this country, but to your region, you know, what's available to you, is there. And then there are videos from like myself and other patients have done little videos about our experiences, and I think that just puts it into kind of human terms. You know, people aren't sat there thinking, oh, I'm just going to go in and it's going to be all doctors and this. You know, the cancer community is incredibly strong, and just, you know, I always say it's a club that no one wants to be part of, but once you're in it, you can't really leave. But also, you will meet the most incredible people within that, whether they were, you know, whatever they were doing in their life beforehand. Yeah, I've just seen the question from Laura that it's available to people across the UK, but it's only the sort of the tailored bits are only tailored to the Southwest at the moment. But what they're doing is they've been at a conference this week, for instance, where they're trying to sell it to other NHS trusts and just expand it through the UK. It's just one of those rare things that actually starts in the Southwest. Normally in the West Country, we get things about 10 years after everyone else, you know, whether it be fashion or music or technology or whatever it is. So it's just a rare thing that it started this end for once. But the desire is to spread it across the UK, certainly, and that's what we're working with different patient groups and different NHS trusts to do.
No, I mean, and yeah, I've looked at it and been in touch with the doctors as well, and they're great, and I know they really value your involvement as well. So thank you for that. I guess I want to open it up a bit to all three of you, because I think one of the things that people worry about is, you know, you might want to do something good with what's happened to you, because really it's the worst thing that will ever happen to most of us, I hope. And you know, to do something good with it kind of gives it meaning, right? You know, and I think that's one of the things that people really struggle with is, what does this all mean? But I think it can also take a real emotional toll. So how have you balanced that? You know, how have you found balancing what's happened to you in your personal story with change you want to make, which is quite personal as well? Do you find it tiring? Is it energizing? Anyone can answer that. I'd just be interested in your reflections. Or no?
I'm happy to jump
Yeah.
in first if you like. Yeah, I think it's a bit of a balancing act, because you'll get the people that want to come up and talk to you about their journey, and that's great, and that's really connecting. But sometimes, you know, that can happen in the middle of a supermarket, and it's like, I'm just doing shopping, I don't really want to have a chat about that. But at the same time, like I said, when you get feedback, really positive feedback, that something you've done has enabled people to communicate or contact other people and make those connections, I think that's really powerful. I think the hardest thing is that you sometimes want to switch off from it, and actually, like I say, you're in that club, you're kind of there all the time. But what I have to do is sort of say, right, I'm going to step away from social media for today, or focus on other things. And a lot of people have said to me, oh, why are you still working? Like, you've had all these horrible health problems. And there's part of me is like, well, I've still got a mortgage. I've still got to pay the bills. You know, that still has to happen. But also, if I didn't have my brain occupied by something else, I think it would probably overwhelm me. So having something, you know, to focus on outside of the cancer world, where you're just Joe Blogs and you're just the person who always were, that's really helpful. Just to keep that balance right.
Yeah, no, and thank you, Roland. And Precious, I can see you nodding along with that. Has that kind of been your
experience? I agree with what Roland has said as well. It can be a bit of both. And sometimes you have to, with all the best intentions in the world, you have to step back a bit and just look after yourself. But also, I think when I first started working with Blood Cancer UK, they threw everything at me. They threw policy, they threw the ambassadorship side of things with me. And I think over time, I've learned to just pick things I want to do, things that I'm really, really, really interested in. But also it's opened up a different pathway for me, because I'm doing something for a big pharmaceutical company on the side as well. But it's being really, really specific, saying I can only do this, I want this, and because I want to only take on things I'm passionate about, and not just everything. Yeah, but you can't really, you've had cancer, you can't really switch off per se, because there are always people wanting to talk to you and ask questions. And same way other people were available for me, I try to be available for other people as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. And certainly, I've experienced it myself. I do quite a lot of other patient involvement work on top of running Shine. And sometimes people, it's almost like they get a hold of you and they're so glad that they have you, that they want you to do 10 different things. Yeah. And you have to say, actually, I've only got time to do one, because you want time for yourself. Yeah. Cara, have you found that at all, or how have you dealt with that kind of the pressures on your time?
Up and down, really. I agree with the comments from both Roland and Precious. It's about balance, and depending, I suppose, where you are, how you're feeling, how much that you can give to it. But I think, so alongside like the toilet rolls, I do some work with the Royal Marsden and with Bowel Cancer UK as well. And I think you just have to learn to put yourself first. And I think the hardest thing for me has always been when you're working with charities, you think if you say no, you're letting them down, but it's almost only by saying no to certain things that I know that I'm going to be able to be productive for them in different areas of it. And I think, what I've done in terms of volunteering or helping out has kind of changed over time as well. When I was in treatment, I was probably more focused on sharing my own story, helping others. I was engaged a lot in helping in forums and those kind of things. But I found the further I am away from my cancer diagnosis, while I'm still happy to talk about it, I can find being in that situation with people going through the treatment quite a drain on my own emotions, because it brings a lot up, and then you're constantly trying to deal with that kind of trauma or pain that you've been through. So I've sort of moved not completely away from it, but that's kind of died down. And on the other hand, I've picked up more kind of PPI work and the stuff that I'm doing that can help influence things that I didn't have the energy to do while I was going through treatment, really. So I think there's just the flux in it. And I feel guilty about letting people down a lot of the time, but I've definitely learned to think about myself first and my health. So yeah, balance key, and do the things you're passionate about doing or you're interested in. It's like if you don't want to do something, you're finding it hard work and a slog, then like you don't have to do it. Don't force yourself to do it. I think that's the thing. Just because you've had a cancer diagnosis doesn't mean you have to go out and save the world. I think feeling passionate about it and wanting to do it makes it easier to do it in the end, because you enjoy the time you spend doing it or spending with other people as well.
Yeah, and certainly, so you mentioned PPI, which is patient and public involvement. And I think that's actually one of the things I've seen over the last kind of 10, 12 years really expand. So a lot of hospitals, a lot of teams within hospitals, as well as kind of funders and the NHS more generally, have these PPI teams where they are looking for patients who can either share their story or review grant applications, that kind of thing. I think, Precious, you've been doing some grant application work, haven't you?
Yeah, I am doing that currently.
Yeah. And how have you found that?
It's really interesting. Again, I did some last year and this year they asked me to come back. So I've just reviewed my first one for this year. And it's not bad. It's a lot of reading and Googling things to understand what the paperwork is asking for. But again, I said to them this year, I just want one a month, because I don't really want to be stuck reading documents, the whole week. So I just review one grant a month and that's it. So I can devote the rest of my time to actually working on the things I'm passionate about. But if you love, if you love reading, if you love learning about new words and new techniques and new treatment proposals and grant application reviews for you, it's perfect.
Yeah. And actually, I know through like the National Institute of Health Research, NIHR, there are sometimes paid opportunities for patients as well, which I think is also a kind of interesting principle. I don't know if you guys have come across it, but this sort of idea, obviously it's not paid their full-time job, but sort of remuneration for your time. Is that something that has come up for you at all? Yeah. Precious, you're nodding.
No, yeah, that's the current PPI panel that I'm on at the Marsden is is funded in small parts. We're kind of pre the actual clinical trial being funded, so we're going through that process at the moment, but we do get remunerated for our time, and it's various different things. And I think at the Marsden you join kind of the PPI centre or like volunteer network, but I actually came onto the project via Bowel Cancer UK because it's specifically about liver ablation and computer aided technology and that kind of thing, which I'm really interested in. So I get bombarded on the one hand of all different opportunities coming through the Marsden, but I'm just like batting them off because I'm like, this is what I'm interested in, that's what I'm doing. So yeah, get sort of remunerated different amounts depending on what we're doing at the time.
And Precious or Roland, have you had that experience as well?
Yeah, different people contact the charity and just looking for people who want to share their stories. And yeah, and I think we get an email every Friday. We just apply if it's something you're interested in doing. But I think you have to bear in mind, if someone wants to hear the patient's experience, you might have to repeat your story over and over again. So if you're feeling really drained, it's not worth the money. It's not worth it. If you have to keep rehashing your cancer experience, and some people will just mine as much as possible in exchange for the money. So be very careful.
Yeah, Roland, I saw you nodding with that as well.
Well, I think that the repetition thing is a really good point, but I think I need to have a word with the My Sunrise guys, because so far I've had a notebook and a polo shirt. That's all the remuneration I've had. But the work I've done with them ties in very closely to my day job, so it's actually just good experience for me anyway. So I'm quite happy with that. But yeah, I think the point that Cara made, like do what you're passionate in about, rather, is so important, because yeah, really early on, I think I kind of got it into my head. I was like, I think when you get a cancer diagnosis, then you have to run a marathon, right? That's what you do. You get cancer and then you run a marathon. That was kind of like
Or
really buzzing around my head
Kilimanjaro.
for ages.
Where
Yeah,
is
one of
Hey,
those things. And then I
don't
was,
knock long walks. Don't knock.
yeah. No, it's fine. But I was just like, hang on a minute. I never had the inclination to run a marathon before. Why the hell would I do it now? So my thing was I put on a day of live music, because music's my big passion. So did that to raise money for a charity. But it was like, yeah, actually do what you want to do, because why, for anyone, that should be the rule for all life. But actually right now, when you've had these diagnoses, that brings it into sharper focus. Just do what makes you happy, for God's sake.
Yeah, because we all have our strengths and skills, and all of those are going to be of benefit to charities or to NHS trusts in some form. So it's just finding your niche within that, really. I think on top of the running marathons, I think sometimes people think that social media is the only way that you can go out and help, and that you have to constantly share your story through TikToks. But there's so many different opportunities if you get sort of under the surface. And I think if you go via a charity, so like Precious has done as well, then they often have contacts outside of that, and you kind of build your network, and opportunities then just start to present themselves, and you can pick and choose, which is fabulous.
I think another thing, sorry, Kind, another thing I wanted to add is take your time. If you don't have to do everything, you don't have to work on one thing forever and ever. So just keep asking questions and keep building those networks, and see what comes up, see what you like. The good thing about working for a big charity is that there's so many different teams within the charity. So I'm always asking questions, and I'm always asking for different opportunities. So there's so much you can do to keep engaged and to give at your own pace to different causes. But it should be fun. So just keep doing the fun bit.
And certainly, I mean, a plug for Shine here is that, sharing, we know from our Google Analytics that, the most popular part of our website is the patient experience, or the personal experiences page. So, something really simple you can do if you're interested is share your experiences there, write it. But we also, all of our work is patient-led. So either stuff like at this conference where we've obviously got you guys, but, we run training for healthcare professionals. We always have someone come and tell their story there if they're comfortable with it, and running sessions and that kind of thing. So there are lots of different opportunities for smaller charities like Shine as well.
Yeah, I think Shine was my first ever, actually, because I'm sure I shared my story, and then I think we did a video, didn't we, at Somerset House? Yeah, that was one of the first things that I ever did in my treatment.
And that is our most popular video on YouTube.
It was mine too.
Oh God.
Yeah, Precious, I think we've got your story up there as well. So Roland, I'll be contacting you once this is done too.
Yep, that's fine. Look forward to it. Yeah.
If anyone has any questions, we've got 5 minutes left. Feel free to pop them in the chat. While we're just seeing that, the one thing I did want to ask, Cara, I mean, you mentioned Deborah James, who actually, was great. And I know she mentioned Shine in one of the books that she wrote. She obviously passed away and did a huge amount of awareness raising for bowel cancer in particular, but I think cancer in younger adults as well. But how have you managed? I mean, losing friends, I think, is one of the worst parts of being involved in the cancer community. And have you found a way to sort of, I don't know, think about it or process it, which helps a little bit? I don't think there's nothing that will ever kind of take the shock or the pain away, but how have you managed that?
I think that was one thing that I mentioned, didn't I? I'm sort of galvanized into action to do something. It kind of reignites my passion to continue with what I'm doing or do something in memory of them. But I just have to be kind to myself. Like, I think at one point I had to start distancing from making new friends within the community because I was losing people, I don't like the word losing, but I still use it. People were dying, and it just regurgitates a lot of what you've been through. And each time that especially somebody with the same cancer as well, you reflect on your own position. You, like, for me, I've been obviously clear of cancer for quite a long time now, and I actually find that really difficult when somebody dies that was diagnosed around the same time. So Deborah was one of those people. It was really stark that, like, our journeys have gone in completely opposite directions, and that can be difficult to get your head around. So when it happens, I just have to allow myself the time to reflect and get any of the support that I need. I mean, I've got great friends and family, so kind of lean on them when I need to. And my Shine group of buddies that sit in my WhatsApp are always there, so they're a good source of people to just, I suppose, vent's not the right word, but I can't think of get it off your chest, because it's difficult to lose people.
Yeah, absolutely. Precious, you look like you were understanding what Cara was saying.
Oh, I get it. I have survivor's guilt as well. It gets really hard, but I'm also in therapy. I've had therapists since I got diagnosed. Yeah, it's just, but I think every time I do what I do, it's for them. It's just, I don't know. I like to think I'm doing it for them. It's just my way of honoring them by pushing ahead, and hope. I don't know. That's a really hard question, Kindman.
I think it's the hardest part about doing this work, though. And, we've lost a few people in the Shine community recently, and it's been really tough on, I found it hard. I think the teams found it hard. And I think the way that we think about it is a bit like you said, we keep going for them, but I also hope that being friends with people, when you have friends who have cancer and you've had cancer, I do think it has a different element to it. You can understand each other in a way that maybe the cancer muggles don't get. And I think that is valuable. And I sort of hope, my hope is that through Shine, people gain more than we lose. And we do lose people from time to time, but, hopefully that those friendships actually really mattered and made a difference to them.
Yeah, the quality of the friendships. Yeah,
absolutely.
You gain through Shine, you gain the people that help you through those moments. I mean, that's what it's been like for me, really. That group of people from the Shine Escape are definitely some of the first people I turn to when I'm in those kind of emotional moments or struggling. So it's kind of part of your toolkit for getting through things.
Yeah. And I should say the Escape was our 3.5-day retreat, which we suspended back in 2020, but we are hoping to get back to it at some point. In the meantime, we do have our Shine Circles program if you're living with incurable cancer, or our Breakout program if you're coming to the end of treatment or you've been in remission for a while. Those are online programs, and we've got new ones starting in January. So if anyone's interested, take a look at the website. Somewhat unbelievably, that is an hour. Has gone. I've just seen in the comments that someone has said they've downloaded the app, Roland, and bought your book. So that's one sale we know we've got for you.
Oh, wow.
I will also.
I've still got a few on my shelf. Yeah.
I want one actually.
Just to show it again. What I will do
I'll
is
send you a message.
I'll make sure that it gets linked to in the resources section of the conference platform. So if anyone's looking for it, you can
Thank you.
And there's 20% of the price, I think, goes to a hospice, doesn't it?
Yeah, St. Luke's Hospice, which is palliative care and lymphedema treatment.
Great. So thank you so much for joining us. Before you leave, I'm going to launch a poll. If anyone, obviously not the speakers, we know how you think.
We can rate the other speakers, surely.
But we would love to know what you think before you leave. Please, tell your friends and family about our conference and about Shine. And we hope you enjoyed it. And Cara, Precious, and Roland, thank you so much for joining us today, because I think it's been
Pleasure.
a great and really
Thanks,
informative
Kynwyn.
session.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Take care. Have a great Sunday. You can have a rest and some
Lovely.
brunch now.
Thanks, everyone. Have a lovely day.
Lovely to meet you all. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye bye.